everyone and welcome to Junior Church Sunday Special. I hope you had a good Christmas. It's lovely to see you again, and I'm just so sorry that most of you can't get to school at the moment, and we just pray that God continues to watch over us all. But we can still meet as a church and you can still watch Junior Church Sunday Special. So a very big welcome to all of you who have tuned in today. And as you probably remember, we are doing a series called The King, the Snake and the Promise. We're on week 5, but we'll go through a quick recap because maybe not all of you can remember what has happened so far. So, first of all, we learned about Adam and Eve, how God created a perfect place called the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve. So we had God's people in God's place under his rule. But very sadly, they said no to God. They said, shove off God, I'm in charge, no to your rules. And God sent them out of the garden. And that could have been the end of the story, but God, in his love and kindness, chose a man called Abraham and made 3 promises, 1, 2, 3. And one of those promises was to give them descendants, so that Abraham would have a child or children, and they would have children, and so on until they had lots of descendants. And he would give them a special land, and then he would bless them. He would bless them by making them happy in that land, but he would also bless them by giving them a descendant, who would be king, who would be God's special king, and he would save the whole world. So, land, descendants, a blessing. And then last time we saw that these promises were all kept when King David became king. And we see that King David was king in his palace over this beautiful land, under God's rule, with lots of descendants and with great blessing. So we saw that God's people were in his special place under his rule, and that those 3 promises had all been kept. Land and descendants and blessing. So, on to today's story. We're going to learn about King Solomon. But before we start the story, we've got a fun activity, so we'll go across to my kitchen and I'm going to do some baking there. Well, hello from our kitchen. I've got a recipe for a lemon cake. I can't wait to try it. So, scales on. 4 ounces of self-raising flour. Here's the self-raising flour. That's easy, isn't it? Because all cakes have flour. Well, nearly all cakes have flour. So that's 2.2 ounces. I'm afraid I'm a bit of a dinosaur. You probably know that. I still work in pounds and ounces where it comes to cooking. There we are. There's 4 ounces. And I think putting in some self-raising flour helps. So we'll put a bit of baking powder. We'll put some baking powder in. Right, next we have sugar. Right, sugar. Do you know what? I think salt looks just the same. Oh, I'll put that in there. That's my mixing bowl. I think salt looks just the same. Let's have a look. Yes, that looks just the same as sugar, doesn't it? Right, I will 4 ounces. Is that what the recipe said? Yeah, 4 ounces of 4 ounces. Well, it should be sugar, but I'm sure salt will be as good. Don't you think? Let's put the salt in there. 4 tablespoons of oil. Well, I could use oil, but vinegar. I think I'll try vinegar this time. 4 tablespoons. Well, I can just estimate tablespoons, can't I? Do you think that's 1, 2, 3, 4? Yeah, I'm sure that will do. Right, and 2 eggs. Here are my eggs. They're free-range eggs, I'm sure you'll be delighted to hear. There we are, in with the eggs. There we are. And the other one. And last of all, the recipe says juice and rind of a lemon. Well, that's a bit of a faff, isn't it? Look, I've got some mustard here. I'm sure if I put mustard in, that will taste much the same. So, look, there we are.
In with the mustard. In the mustard. Yum, 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 yum. Good. Right. Well, let's mix it up, shall we? Let's mix it up. Oh, that's looking good, isn't it? Looking good. There. Yeah, I think we're almost there, aren't we? Delicious. And you know what? It'd be a shame to waste the shells. Let's put the shells in as well. There we are. Mix them around. Right, I think we're ready to put it in the tin. What did I do with my tin? Oh, it's right at the other end of the kitchen, and I better not trip over that. How am I going to get there? Pull that plug out. Right, here's my tin. Here's one I prepared earlier, as let's say in Blue Peter. Put that plug back in. And into the there, I'm sure that shell will give it an extra crunch, won't it? Delicious. Oh, now it shows I didn't plan quite carefully enough. I think I need a scraper. I don't want to leave that. Don't want to leave that in the pan. Get myself a scraper. There we are. Get it all out. And perhaps when it's done, I'll give it to Philip to sample. See if he'd like some cake. Right, there we are. Now I see it says there microwave. Well, I could use a microwave, but we've got a halogen oven. I'm sure a halogen oven is as good. So I'll put it in there. Now I need to take that plug out and put the halogen oven plug in. There we are. Start it. Now what's the temperature? It doesn't tell the temperature. I'll have to guess, won't I? Time. Oh, let's see. Microwave says 5 minutes. I think it might need a bit longer. Let's put 10 minutes. Oh, it's got 10 minutes, that's good. And temperature, 120. I think that's not quite hot enough. So let's put the temperature up to 180. There we are, fantastic. Look at my cake. I can't wait to taste it, and we'll see what Philip says. Okay, see you later when it's done. Philip, cake's ready. Would you like to try a bit?
Oh.
It's all ready, here it is. Shall I cut you a piece?
Oh, that looks nice.
Right,
I'd love to try that, thank you. Oh, look at that. Is that lemon cake?
Yes, look, this is the recipe I used.
Oh, yeah. Lemon chocolate, my favourite.
I'm afraid I haven't put the icing on, but I can always do that, you know, when you've had a bit.
Can't always have everything.
No. Right, there you are.
Great. Oh.
Might have a bit of eggshell in, but I thought it wouldn't matter.
Oh, I don't mind about that. Well.
Oh, yeah, you can see the eggshell there. Never mind.
Well, look, if you hold the camera.
I'll hold the camera.
Got it?
Got it. Better not drop it.
And I'll...
Oh, where is he? There is he. Right, okay, he's going to try some cake.
Hi, children. Look at that beautiful cake.
Yes. Risen well. Oh.
What do you put in that? It's a salt. Are you mad? Oh, that's disgusting. Not even that.
Oh dear. Didn't you like it?
Ah.
Oh dear, perhaps I should have followed the instructions as they were written. Oh dear. Well, our story today is about someone else who didn't follow instructions, didn't follow God's rules. So we'll go on and hear about King Solomon.
Right. Welcome back. So before I tell you the story, let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for giving us the Bible, your word. And we pray that you will help us to listen and learn and understand all that you want to tell us today. And Father, we pray that you will give us hearts that want to worship you and want to follow you and want to love you all the rest of our lives. We pray this in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Amen.
Great, so on to our story. Here we have King David. Now, King David was a very good king. We saw how he ruled over God's people in God's special land, and every everyone was happy. On the whole, David was a good king because he wanted to please God with all his heart. So there's David's heart turned to God, and I'm going to put it under this crown here because David wanted to please God and obey him and follow him and worship him. Now, one of the reasons that the people were happy was that God had given them 10 special rules or 10 commandments. Now, I think you've got rules at your school. Wonder if you can remember what those rules are. Let me guess. One of those rules might be to respect the teachers and to listen to them. Another might be to respect each other, to play well, to treat each other really kindly and be good friends. Another might be to respect each other's property. But I wonder who you think those rules help. Well, they help you, don't they? If you keep those rules, then you can be in school and you can be safe and happy and everyone gets on well together. So good rules are good for us because they help protect us and they keep us happy. Now, God had 10 main rules for his people. They were rules like, don't lie to one another, don't kill each other. Well, you can see why those rules are good rules. But the first rule was the most important of all. Here it is. And it says, don't have any other gods before me, or don't have any other gods. So, what do you think that might mean? Don't have any gods. Well, remember with King David, we saw they were all happy because they worshipped and obeyed God. But all the countries around Israel, they were ruled by other kings who probably weren't anywhere near as good a king as King David. And they worshipped other gods. Well, they weren't really gods at all. The people prayed to idols, which were pretend gods made out of wood and stone and gold. But as I said, they weren't gods at all. They weren't real gods, they were just pretend gods. Now, God was very worried that his people would stop being his. He was worried that his people would forget about him and start thinking that these pretend gods were real, because they weren't real at all. They hadn't made the world, had they? They hadn't made Adam and Eve. They hadn't made the Garden of Eden. They hadn't put them in that beautiful place. These gods here are just pretend gods. And following the wrong God is making a terribly big mistake. In fact, it's the worst mistake you can make. So, God warned them with his very first rule, don't have any other gods. Well, we already saw that King David was a good king. He made some mistakes, but in the end he always said sorry to God and turned back to doing things God's way. So he served God with his whole heart. But then King David got old and died. And his son, Solomon, became king instead. Now, I'll take that out actually. Now, King Solomon was very clever. And when he was king, on the outside it looked like everything was very good. So you see his palace, he made this beautiful, I think we'll move King David out of the way. His palace was full of gold and jewels. And he had a great big throne. He had a great big throne made of ivory. Can you see that okay? Made of ivory with armrests of golden lions. And there were lions going all the way down the steps that led to his throne. It was a magnificent throne. And King David King Solomon would have looked magnificent when he was sitting on the throne and receiving visitors and people who went to consult him and ask his advice, because he was a very wise king. He did start out well. He asked God for wisdom and he built God a beautiful temple. So King Solomon started out very well. But as I say, he had this splendid palace, and everything was so rich and magnificent that other kings came and they bowed down before him and gave him much honour and brought expensive and precious gifts for him, because King Solomon was so important and so rich and so magnificent. But that was only on the outside, because inside Solomon was making a big mistake, a very big mistake. And here's what he did. Instead of having just one wife, he had lots of wives. I've got 3 here, 3 wives, but you know, he had 300 princesses as wives, and then he had 700 more besides. So he didn't have just one wife, he had lots of wives. After all, he was king, he could do what he liked. And that's where the problem began. But the problem got worse, because God had also said, don't marry people from other lands who don't love me and follow me. Why? God said, because they would surely turn your hearts after their gods. Don't marry people from other lands. Why? Because they'll surely turn your heart after their gods. But that's exactly what Solomon did, because these 300 princesses came from foreign countries where they worshipped pretend gods. They worshipped gods of wood and stone and gold. They prayed to these statues made of wood and stone and gold. And guess what? When Solomon's wives came to live at his palace, guess what they brought with him? Guess what they brought with them? They brought their gods. They brought their silly statues. They brought their gods of wood and stone and gold. And they had special dinners and made sacrifices and parties for their pretend gods. And do you know what the worst thing was? Can you guess what Solomon did? Do you think he stopped them? Do you think he said, no, Matilda, you mustn't do that. You mustn't worship that God. No, he didn't. He encouraged them. And look, he even has his own God, his own idol that he worshipped. He joined in their parties and he offered sacrifices to their statues instead of to God. So his wives turned his heart away from the true and living God. And he even built special altars and temples so that other people could join in. So he would say, of course I'll build a temple for you, Matilda. So Matilda would worship her God in her temple. And of course I'll come and sacrifice to your God, Matilda. So his heart, instead of following God, the real God, was turned aside to idols. His wives turned his heart away from the other God, turned his heart away from God to the other gods. King Solomon had made a terrible mistake. He was doing just what God had told him not to do. He was doing just what God just what Adam and Eve had done in the Garden of Eden. He was saying, shove off, God, note your rules, I'm in charge. And God was sad. God was very sad, and God was very angry. So what happened to Adam and Eve when they disobeyed God? They were sent out of the garden. What do you think will happen to Solomon? What do you think will happen to Solomon and the people of Israel? Well, here's what God said to Solomon, and it's very, very sad. Because everything had been so good when David was king, when all the people were happy in God's place, under God's rule. God said to Solomon, Solomon, because you wouldn't obey me, I'm going to take your kingdom away from you. And next week, we'll see that that's exactly what God did. But now we're going to listen to a song, and I hope you're going to join in with the song. We've learnt the first verse, which was David was a mighty king. And verse 2 is about Solomon. And verse 3 is about the other kings who followed Solomon, who also, on the whole, by and large, rejected God as king. So now we'll join in with David was a mighty king.
David was a mighty king. He beat Goliath with a sling. David was a mighty king. He beat Goliath with a sling. But Jesus, he's the best king of all. He's the way, he's the one, he's the Lord of lords. He's the Lord of lords. He's the Lord of lords. David's son was Solomon. He built a home to call God's own. David's son was Solomon. He built a home to call God's own. But Jesus, he's the best king of all. He's the way, he's the one, he's the Lord of lords. He's the Lord of lords. He's the Lord of lords. Israel's kings rejected God. They failed to follow him as Lord. Israel's kings rejected God. They failed to follow him as Lord. But Jesus, he's the best king of all. He's the way, he's the one, he's the Lord of lords. He's the Lord of lords. He's the Lord of lords.
So with David, we saw that all God's promises were kept. God had given them land and descendants and blessing. But here we see King Solomon clinging to an idol that he had made to worship. And so on our banner, we see God's crown crossed out because Solomon said to God, shove off, God, I'm in charge, note your rules. So God's crown is crossed out, and very, very sadly, Solomon is worshipping idols, joining in with his wives in worshipping all those idols, and see how unhappy he is here. See how unhappy he is, because instead of worshipping the true God, he is worshipping idols. So our memory verse today is love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And that's from the book of Mark, chapter 12, verse 30. So love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul and your strength. No, that's the wrong way around. With all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. So, let's go to application. Perhaps we could call this the story of two hearts. Here is David's heart. Here is David's heart. David wanted to please God with all his heart. So we'll put it back here. David wanted to please God with all his heart. But here is Solomon's heart. His wives had turned his heart away from God. His heart had turned away from the Lord. That's why the crown is crossed out on the banner. His heart was turned away from the Lord. What about us? Do you know we have trouble obeying God? And do you know we too have idols? Okay, we don't have idols of wood and stone and gold like all the wives did, like Solomon did. But we have other idols because we fill our hearts with other things and we worship. We worship, maybe, you might not think this, but we watch television a lot and we have iPads and PlayStations and we spend a lot of time doing these things. And we don't worship God with our whole hearts because these things, these iPads and PlayStations, they take over our hearts. They take over our lives. So this year, let's ask God to be our King. God always forgives us if we turn back to him, like King David did, who worshipped God with his whole heart. King Solomon got it wrong, but let us get it right by asking God's forgiveness for the wrong things we do. And let's ask him to show us the idols in our hearts and ask him to help us to worship him with all our hearts. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, it's so sad that Solomon's wives turned his heart away from you. It's so sad that Solomon worships statues rather than worshipping you, the only true God. Please forgive me all the ways I have ignored you and worshipped other things. Please create in me a clean heart and give me your Holy Spirit so that I can worship you with my whole heart. Thank you that you loved me so much you sent Jesus to die for me. Please help me to love you more and more. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. And now we'll just look at some worksheets. Make a bit of space here. Now I'm afraid I haven't duplicated these yet because couldn't get my scanner to work. But first of all, God willing, I will duplicate these and they'll be on the document I sent to my parents so that they can print them off and you can complete them. So for younger children first, these you may guess are Solomon's wives. So print off this page and then you can colour in these wives and then you can cut them out. And then there'll be another page to print off. Here's Solomon, and it says Solomon had many wives from many countries. They made him turn away from God. So if you stick each of the wives on each of the spaces, and here's the verse, memory verse for the younger children. It's shorter, as you'll see. Love God with all your heart. And then for the older children, here first of all is the memory verse. So fill in the gaps. Love the Lord with all your heart, soul, mind and strength. Try and get in the right order. And then that, I'll ask your parents to print that on the back of this, which is just a short worksheet to follow up the lesson. So, for example, what does it mean to follow God wholeheartedly? And if you're not sure of the answers, then you can look up these references. I'll give you a clue for the first one. to worship God alone, not to worship any other gods. So there are worksheets, and I hope you managed to do those. And it's been great to be with you today. Thanks for tuning in, and God willing, I'll be here next week too for another lesson. The next lesson, we'll see what happened to King Solomon and the kings who came after him. Thanks for tuning in. Goodbye, everybody.
David was a mighty king. He beat Goliath with a sling. David was a mighty king. He beat Goliath with a sling. But Jesus, Jesus, he's the best king of all. He's the way, he's the one, he's the Lord of lords. He's the Lord of lords. He's the Lord of lords. David's son was Solomon. He built a home to call God's own. David's son was Solomon. He built a home to call God's own. But Jesus, Jesus, he's the best king of all. He's the way, he's the one, he's the Lord of lords. He's the Lord of lords. He's the Lord of lords. Israel's kings rejected God. They failed to follow him as Lord. Israel's kings rejected God. They failed to follow him as Lord. But Jesus, Jesus, he's the best king of all. He's the way, he's the one,